Good day. This is episode 3 of Beyond the Fog podcast, or more specifically, the first part of this episode. Because the length of this episode was longer than I wanted, I had to split it into 2 parts. Both would be published at the same time, roughly, but still, for convenience sake, these are 2 separate episodes that you would be able to listen separately. So now to the episode itself. In January this year, 2024, a finance employee at multinational firm in Hong Kong received an email from their UK-based chief financial officer. The message requested a secret transaction, which is quite suspicious. To reassure Hong Kong employees, a video conference was held with the CFO and other company executives present. Everything appeared legitimate. The faces, voices, mannerisms, everything was just as it should be. But they weren't actually real. What unfolded was a sophisticated scam involving deepfake technology, resulting in 15 transactions and a loss of 200 millions of Hong Kong dollars, which is roughly 25.6 millions USD. By the time the fraud was uncovered, the damage was already done. So as AI-powered deception grows more sophisticated, how can businesses and individuals protect themselves? Accenture Life Trends 2025 is exactly the report that looks at this interplay between trust, technology, human behavior, and why adapting to these trends is no longer optional. In this episode, you will learn that customers expect quick solutions and increasingly value offline interactions more, and how you can actually adapt to that. We would also discuss the cost of hesitancy that is created by all these fakes. But first, as usual, who produced the report and how it was done. So Accenture is a large Irish consulting company with about 775 employees in 120 countries, so quite large one, that provides strategy and technology advice. The methodology for this report, it's an yearly report, so it's repeatable methodology, is a bit peculiar. The first one, it is done in several steps or stages. On the first stage, there is a research team that is comprised from designers, creatives, technologists, sociologists, even anthropologists, who are a part of Accenture's own global network, and who actually come up with the first ideas around the report. They look at the market signals from various countries and sectors for emerging trends. There are interviews with, in this specific case, with people in 8 countries, and online survey. It's quite a comprehensive one, 24,295 participants, 22 markets. So quite a large sample, enough to make some conclusions out of that. And this allows them not only to come up with these trends, but also to cross-verify and validate them. And the last step is obviously synthesizing it all in a single document, which is this report. If there is only one thing you would remember from this episode, make it this: reorient your business to growing impatience and demand for offline interactions. This is the main point. Now to the actual findings of the report. I have already named the first trend, essentially centered around costs of hesitation. This trend could be understood as hesitation introduced into all digital channels. The hesitation is due to erosion of trust caused by scams, fake content, deepfakes, and AI-generated misinformation. In the past year, roughly a third of consumers, specifically 38%, have seen fraudulent product or service reviews online. 52%, so more than a half, have seen fake news or articles or directly experienced deepfake attacks, just like the one I mentioned previously. The online discovery experience has become frustrating. The way we used to find new products and services significantly degraded, and there are three main reasons for that. The first one is that the search experience itself has become cluttered with suggested posts, related queries, advertising search results, and so on. When people want only one thing, and that thing is what they are searching for, not something else. Second, people increasingly cannot trust what they find is real. And the third one is that every point of this interaction has such strong influence of all these paid instruments that around half of all people using these services feel like shopping is being pushed on them whenever they go online. And that is very, very tiring experience. As a result, consumers increasingly hesitate in online interactions, and implications of this extend to online shopping, content discovery, brand trust, and so on. So this is what the trend is about. Now compare this to the fact that 62% of people, respondents for this online survey in this case, say that trust is an important factor for them when choosing to engage with the company or brand, and that is up from 56% last year. So how much people value trust in these interactions is steadily growing, while previously, let's say 10 years ago, it was not that important at all. It was the period of time when people valued the convenience of internet much more than trust. Now that is flipping on itself. And content created even with fake content created even with harmless intent is also affecting people's ability to trust what they read online. Let's say memes, they are funny, but sometimes you just don't know whether that is a meme, a joke, or that's actually factually correct. 48% of people often, always question the authenticity of news. Partially that adds to what I just said about memes and that sort of stuff, but it also tells us about the fact that trust in media, that those mass media services, has significantly degraded as well. People no longer trust that news, let's say on television or from some sort of agency, Reuters, let's say, is actually correct, that they did their job and they did it in unbiased way. And things got only worse with generative AI. The byproduct of generative AI, despite all the benefits, is that it makes creating deceptive yet simultaneously hyper-customized and personalized content almost effortless. At the same time, fraudulent reviews, scam ads, and fake brands are highly visible and destroy trust very quickly. For a long time, the sheer convenience outweighed the people's need for trust, but now that's no longer the case. The most important move now is for every brand, company, platform, business, government to prioritize trust in channels and digital experience. The goal of the management now should be to make it easy for people to trust in their brand, such that engaging them brings no hesitation. It's basically hesitation-free choice. That is what companies should focus on, and what they are not really doing well right now. This might also mean revisiting or even completely redesigning channel strategies from scratch. And for organizations intentionally dabbling with AI-generated content, it will be critical to monitor how that content is received by customers. The assumption was that people would adapt, get used to generated images of people or objects, but there is a significant evidence indicating the opposite. So be careful with those things and don't play too much with it. It is important because trust is central to not only customer acquiring new customers, but also to customer engagement and retention. One of the priorities for any customer-facing business is creating a business process that would allow customers to verify the authenticity of communications and transactions easily. It could be QR codes, use of blockchain, although personally I don't like blockchain all that much, verification tools, or by design of the channel itself. Your customers should be very, very clear how they can check if the product or services is yours, and if the information they saw elsewhere is actually correct, it's real. Customer support, which is we talked about customer acquisition and engagement, but customer support also should be specifically trained for cases involving trust or countering deceptive information. Because customer support, as we discussed in previous episode, has very large impact on customer retention. And by the way, this is also an opportunity for insurance companies to introduce new coverage plans for their for their clients that work in B2C, for example, of B2B even for that matter. Reality, all this information that I just pointed out is based on the report itself, but the reality is actually even more complicated than report makes it out to be. There was another research made by KPMG. You can look it up, Global Tech Report 2024, I think, where 78% of executives worry they're struggling to keep up with the pace of change, leading to potentially hasty decisions in technology adoption. So they have to keep up. They cannot do it properly, which leads to all sorts of gaps in the implementation of those processes, which then could easily lead to loss of trust. There is a number in this report that 57% of these companies have flaws in their foundational IT systems. And these flaws, it's not just any flaw, but in this statistic, only those flaws that cause disruptions on a weekly basis. So severe flaws, that is what we are talking about. Pretty much these flaws caused by large technical debt that many companies have, and that is very difficult to get rid of, but is very necessary to do so. Perhaps even more concerning that 74% of organizations plan to focus on investing in new tech rather than enhancing the value of their existing tech suite, which could potentially increase all the issues that we just discussed, including trust loss. The public sector also faces similar challenges. Government respondents in that, I think it was also in that KPMG report, expressed concerns over inadequate technology strategy and organizational silos, with almost 60% of government leaders admitting that cybersecurity is often treated just as a box ticking exercise rather than a process that is actually important and something that influences both the culture and their operations. I think Gartner 2025 Top Strategic Technology Trends report also highlights other two critical areas that need addressing. This information security, which we somewhat covered already, and AI governance platforms. With the rise of this AI-powered misinformation or disinformation, there is a growing need for systems that can identify and verify the authenticity of information. So that is the approach of governmental bodies. They want some sort of platform that would cover this issue. AI governance platforms, in their mind, must ensure that AI systems are used responsibly and that they would not disrupt the trust and instead would be reliable, transparent, and aligned with ethical standards. To be honest, I think it's somewhat a fool's errand, and this approach would not work in the end, but there is little doubt in my mind that the government would actually try it out, maybe even somewhat forcefully, depending on how the situation evolves. Harvard Business Review also identifies several organizational behaviors that compound these trust issues. The first one is addition sickness, which most of us are quite familiar with, where organizations add unnecessary rules and procedures all the time, which leads to decreased productivity and increased frustration. So, on the inside of businesses, we have this constant introductions of new rules as if rules by themselves would solve the issue, making employees more frustrated and increasing the effects of technical debt, at the same time forcing new technology into this somewhat fractured infrastructure. And this is how we are trying to resolve the trust issues with the customers, which obviously cannot be done that way. And all these issues compounding on each other only increase the negative effects. Well, first of all, as organizations grow and as markets, these digital markets, let's say, mature, the complexity and number of processes grow, and in the end, that could lead to sort of decision-making paralysis. So we want to avoid that. On the other hand, we want to avoid employees being burdened by all sorts of excessive meetings, demands, emails, causing decision fatigue, and hesitating in taking action when action can actually be taken to solve some of these issues. So, from the company's standpoint, to resolve the trust issue, they need to approach these internal issues that I mentioned, then try to resolve some of the external ones, which is obviously quite difficult, but there are a number of measures that companies can pursue. The first one is they could focus on value realization from existing technology before pursuing new ones. Or more simpler, just try to make your existing technology work properly first before you move on to the next shiny thing. Implementing new technology by itself is not a virtue. It could become a reason for all sorts of troubles for the company. So you don't want that. So try to properly digest the technologies that you already have so that you don't have massive technological debt. Then implement robust testing and validation processes for new technology adoption. Do not adopt something just because it's hype or because it's something that you think should be implemented. First, try to test it out whether it works the way you think it should work. Develop clear metrics for measuring technology ROI, but this is more for CTO people. Build stronger relationships with third-party experts for guidance and implementation. Oftentimes, companies try to do all of this stuff internally, but you don't want to give away all these things to external companies. You also want to use the external people expertise because they have seen dozens, hundreds companies like yours, and they may know things that you don't. Although, obviously, because you are in your company, you know things that they don't. So don't just give everything to them. When implementing AI, also try to be clear on the policies for its use, audit it regularly, and be transparent, or at least strive for the transparency in AI making decisions. Develop and deploy misinformation detection systems where appropriate. Create clear authentication mechanisms for digital content. I briefly touched on that already. Establish clear protocols for information verification, and try to avoid all these try to avoid decision fatigue by not introducing new rules, policies all the time. Try to strive to one in, one out kind of rule for new procedures. Set clear guidance for email communications, meetings, with the purpose of avoiding unnecessary ones. You don't want your employees overwhelmed when they already are trying to solve a very complicated issue. Invest in employees' training and development, and more broadly, try to foster a culture of continuous learning in your company. You would also need some cross-functional teams to break down the silos in your company and make all these processes more efficient. Clear communication channels, reviews and updates on cybersecurity measures, all of those are given, I assume. Push hard for trust building mechanisms with all the stakeholders, and with the focus, of course, on your customers, because they are the core of your business in the end. Businesses could also use another tactic to regain some of the trust and authenticity that was lost, and this idea is based on Paul Graham suggested patent pledge. So the pledge he came up with is no first use of software patents against companies with less than 25 people. This was suggested back then to prevent use of patents by large corporations with bad products that are trying to suppress small companies with good products. This practice is well known and stifles innovation for obvious reasons. The pledge is not legally binding, obviously, but companies that do not join would be very visible, and every breach of the pledge would have to be paid with reputation and trust. The added benefit is that no intervention from the government is required, which I think businesses should appreciate. So the pledge the companies could make is that a public pledge to not use deepfakes and other deceptive tactics in their advertising and overall messaging to the customers. So from the customer perspective, we can see who made this pledge, who did not. And every case when we see it is not followed through, we can understand how much that company actually values, or rather not, its customers. And well, as a customers, the only thing we can really try to do is to stay vigilant and try to not be scammed as much as possible. So the other trend I wanted to talk about in this first part of this episode is so-called parents trap. So what it is, the trend is as follows. The finding, it's essentially about finding the balance between letting children learn by experience and keeping them safe from harm at the same time. And it has always been a challenging task. In some situations, potential threats are obvious from distance, giving parents sufficient time to intervene. Sometimes it's also from experience of the parents themselves, when they actually have proper understanding of the threat, how it manifests in day-to-day interactions, they can spot it and also intervene. But unlike those sorts of threats we as society were quite familiar with, unlike physical hazards and all those kinds of things, we still don't quite know the dangers of smartphones and social media, even ourselves. So this type of harm could stay undetected until the consequences become clear. And it may be years down the line, sometimes when it's too late to do anything. Smartphones and social media provide obvious benefits for all users. But only in the last few years did we have enough information to see the link between the use of these tools and significant rise in teens' depression, mental illnesses, hospital admissions for self-harm, for example, and even suicides among young people. There are other types of harm as well. For example, girls risk to be victims of cyberbullying and targets of AI generated explicit content with their image, obviously with no consent at all. Boys are more often victims of monetary extortion, with explicit content serving as a tool for blackmail. So, in other words, it's similar attacks, but they have different vectors. One is attack on reputation, and another is monetary attack or financial attack. The average age of victims of these crimes is 14 to 17 years old. And according to FBI, from 2021 to 2023, this led to at least 20 suicides. It also led to a significant social and political polarization. Teenage boys are bombarded with anti-male messages, implying that they are the ones accountable for all the society problems, including articles from respectable sources pushing this narrative. At the same time, there is also a fourfold increase in content focused on anger and blame directed at women. And we can see that this is self-feeding mechanism, where boys are accused of all crimes in the society, essentially, not only boys, just males in general, which then lead to anger, and that anger is obviously directed at women. And there is a political divergence based on that, where young women become sharply more liberal, while their male counterparts are not. And this is the case for at least the last 5 years or so. And we can see that in the last elections in the United States, for example, where Democratic Party targeted young women, and young men on the other side went for Republican Party. But it's not only that. There has also been a notable increase in avoidance of in-person interaction altogether, because people get tired of all of this. In Japan, a form of extreme social withdrawal, also known as hikikomori, has been around since at least late 1990s, just as access to the internet became widespread. And I have to note that COVID didn't help things at all. Rather, it exacerbated all the existing problems. At the center of this trend are parents trapped between the imperative to protect their children from harm, while understanding that they cannot cut them off the internet completely, because that would remove opportunities and ability to fully live in a modern society. But it came to a point where almost 65% globally think parents should limit the time their children spend on social media. So it's sort of the balance. And also note that I didn't say 65% of parents, I said 65% globally, people, in general, even those who are not parents, came to the same conclusion. And it's also sort of a balance, where you are not completely cutting them off from the internet, from smartphones and all those sort of things, and you, on the other hand, do not allow it to sort of control their life. You just limit the interaction where they can use it sufficiently to, for example, to educate themselves, and also gain a sort of immunity to the things going on in social media, so that they would not be overwhelmed once they have that free access. The ultimate goal is obviously not to resist technology, but rather to empower young people to use it appropriately. By combining technological understanding with distinctly human qualities such as creativity, empathy, critical thinking, the next generation can remain resilient and innovative in this increasingly AI-driven world. Parents would play a crucial role in guiding their children to become lifelong learners who can navigate complex professional landscapes with confidence and purpose, rather than just people who spend most of their times enraged in social media. Twitter is a good example. At the same time, technology firms' response is sort of lukewarm at best and very superficial. And parents just not willing to accept it anymore. They're organizing from bottom up, while governments attempt to legislate from top bottom. This matters for companies because public debate around what it means to grow up in such a digitally dependent society, first, it's ready to erupt, and second, once it erupts, the intensity of this issue would grow sharply. And as for now, in the UK, St. Albans is set to become the first city to be smartphone free for all children under 14. And the number of London schools are seeking to follow suit as well. In February 2024, French government passed a law to protect children on internet, specifically on social networks. China has been somewhat ahead of this trend and imposed limits on children's exposure to short videos and online games back in 2021. And by the way, that was a move welcomed by most parents, as far as I'm aware. If I have any Chinese viewers who could confirm this or maybe confront this, feel free to do so in the comments. So this trend would only grow stronger, and bans on smartphones for children under 14 or even 16 could very well become global. What this means for businesses. So for the last decade or two, what we saw in hardware technology world, let's say, was combining every possible capability in a single device, smartphone. Now we would likely see the reverse process. Although it might take significant time, but I think it would not take too long, maybe a couple of years at most. Children really only need to be locatable, contactable, and able to pay for certain things, such as transportation fare, for example. So all these potentially harmful things could be cut off from the device. And it follows that a new class of electronic device is in demand, and it would likely be produced relatively shortly. I think there are already some attempts to do that. It would, I think, look something like semi-dumb phone. Not completely dumb phone, because those, for example, do not provide for location services. So parents would not be able to locate their children using Nokia phones, for example. No payment capabilities and things like that. But it would be somewhat of a mix between dumb phones and smartphones that would have these capabilities. On the software side, any business that targets children and teens will feel the impact, including social media, technology platforms, telcos, banks, food and drinks, hospitality, media, and so on. The channels, the delivery of information, all of that would have to change and adapt. I think there are probably already some sort of special plans from telcos for children, and these sort of services would only increase and grow in all sorts of ways. It's very likely that some services would be decimated completely in favor of offline experiences. As for services and products that would stay digital, if you have this sort of service, then getting parents on board is crucial, and you have to sort of focus your efforts on that, so that your products and your company is not in confrontation with parents, where parents try to restrict their children access to your services, be it specifically or maybe just as part of a bucket. You want to build some sort of cooperation with them so that they would be okay with children using your services. And remember, the same considerations are true for services that are used on, let's say, laptops or computers otherwise, because these limitations might not be only limited to smartphones, although that's the most obvious step. Okay, this is the end of the first part of the third episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. See the links in my Telegram channel, and there should be already a second part of this episode, or if it's not present, it would be published shortly, so we would continue there. See you.